What's going on YouTube? Ryan Alex back from Dopamon again. Today, round 2 of our mock draft 2022 NHL Entry Draft is happening on the 7th and 8th of July. We will be streaming it, so join us here on this channel for those days. Come hang out with us. We're going to go through the second round. As you see, we've already done the first. If you haven't seen that video yet, go click on it. Really appreciate it and see all of our picks. So I guess you're spoiled for 31-32 if you found this video first. But if you came from that video, thanks so much for sticking around. We're going to do a full second round mock draft here, going back and forth. We couldn't agree on one list. There's no way, that would be insane. So yeah, we're just going to go back and forth and pick the rest of our guys here and give a little scouting report, a little brief on what each of these guys are.
And we're Dopamon. We talk hockey news, analysis. We got mock drafts and scouting reports on the channel. So go check out some scouting reports if you want to watch a video. I've done some of the top Russian prospects in the draft, mostly in the first and some in the second round here. And we've also got some playoff coverage. Just stick around, hit like, subscribe, and keep talking hockey with us.
All right, without further ado, it's an odd number, so I'll start off here. Keep it similar to yesterday was you. You can start off.
Okay. I have Montreal at 33 to open up day 2. Selecting David Goyette, another center. We both have Montreal picking 2 centers in the first round, but center depth was never a bad thing. I like Goyette. I think he could maybe even rise to the late first round, but for me, just given how teams are picking at this point and how many picks they have, like Montreal, Arizona, Seattle, they all have so many multiple early round picks. I feel like the late first round picks won't take a guy like Goyette, but the early second round picks will. I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about this one. I like it. And spoiler alert, I have 5 more centers from the OHL left in my second round, so it's just the start.
A lot of centers from the OHL, a lot of defensemen in this part of the draft. I will start my defenseman off here. Montreal picking Kalle Odelius, sorry. Kalle Odelius. You had him picked in the first round here. We both kind of had the same wording on he's a modern defensive defenseman. He's not going to be an offensive power play guy. He's a good skater, will lay the body if he has to, but defends with his feet and with his stick rather than his body. Modern day Jacob Slavin. I said at the most he could be a Jacob Slavin, and at worst he's a serviceable bottom pairing guy that won't hurt you defensively. And I think Montreal needs guys like that in their system. Moving on to Arizona, who have an absolutely incredible amount of picks, first and second round. 4 more, I think, in the second round here, starting at 34. I have them taking Vladimir Gerdinin, who you also have in the first round, Alex, and you have a report on. He's played most of his time between the VHL and the MHL. He did score a point in the KHL, and I believe you said he was the only one to do so.
The only first-year draft-eligible skater in Russia to score in the KHL this year.
Yeah, at most he had 18 games played in the MHL, 2 goals, 11 assists. He's a smooth skating, puck handling defenseman, works well in small areas, but I think needs to get a little stronger to compete in professional in the NHL. But he's got some good offensive skills, and he reminds me of Rasmus Sandin a little bit, being a Leafs bias a little. So I'll bring that back in. Reminds me of what Rasmus Sandin was, just not an overly big, overly strong, but really good. Offensive and playmaking abilities with some good skating. So Arizona gets another defenseman here.
I have Arizona selecting Jimmy Snuggerud, the winger, the USD development program. He is the most fringe first rounder for me. He has all the tools of a first round pick, but he's just too inconsistent offensively. I think he's fairly good defensively, but the offensive part where if he doesn't score, I don't know, it's just not enough. He's not enough of like a complete player for me. I think he has a solid floor as a bottom 6 guy, but if he's not showing that clear top 6 potential, I have him just in the second. I can't have him in the first, and I think he just work well in Arizona. They could use a guy who isn't just an elite scoring guy, has a mixed bag of talent and does, real workmanship kind of attitude, and I think that he'll be good for Arizona.
Good pick. Good pick. 25.
25, I have
35.
Seattle. Oh, 35. Thank you. I have Seattle taking Danny Zilkin out of the Guelph Storm in the OHL. We've both had the opportunity to not only watch video of Zilkin play, but see him live. I think he has second line center written all over him. He has elite puck skills, solid skater, but it's clear that aside from like these flashes of brilliance, that his offensive sense is kind of a little bit more one dimensional. He isn't the most creative playmaker. He's not a crazy sniper. He really just excels at like the north south puck carrying game, which, is amazing and it does produce a lot of offense, but there's still just a little bit of like a missing piece from his game that separates him from like the other top centers in this draft. Fine, I think he has all the tools to like be a number 2 in Seattle behind a guy like Matty Beniers. I think he'd be a perfect number 2 center, and that he could really shine in the NHL. And of course, Seattle needs that number 2 center spot. They don't really have a lot of depth. They've only been around for one season, so I think that this could be a good pick.
Nice. I'm a huge fan of Danny Zilkin. We'll get to him on my side eventually here. Uh, for me, 35. All right, we're back. Couldn't move my card down for some reason for a second there. I have Ryan Chesley, Seattle's pick here. Right-hand defenseman, 6 foot, 187 pounds, in 59 games in U.S. National Development Program at 29 points, 12 goals. Solid. I had him in my first round earlier in the year, slipped out a little bit, but he is a right-hand shot, a safe pick, right? I think can be seen kind of, if he puts it all together consistently, you could have a decent top 4 defenseman in all areas of the game. And Seattle, you mentioned it or alluded to it last video in the first round that Seattle's defense is a little suspect in general. So bringing guys up that know how to play defense, can play a good two-way game is pretty crucial. So I have Ryan Chesley here for Seattle. Following up with another Arizona pick, I have finally the third part of that Djurgårdens line, Noah Ostlund. Noah Ostlund, most of the time spent in Djurgårdens J20 league, 32 games played, 42 points, 9 goals. Right now is the most questionable of those three for me. Doesn't bring a lot of size or strength. There's been many players like him, I think, that have these tools, but just not quite enough skill to be a decent producer in the NHL. He needs to, remain that, dynamic player and be stronger on his skates, I think, to take the next step. But there's been a lot of guys like him that haven't played in the NHL, so I'm a little worried about that. So for now, I have 36 to Arizona, who have a lot of picks and can take some flyers on some guys.
Mm-hmm. So I have Arizona at 36, selecting Matthias Havelid, the right shot D out of Sweden. Which means, with this pick, I have Arizona selecting basically a full line up to this point. 2 wingers, a center, and both right and left-handed defensemen. So I'd like to think that maybe one day all 5 of those guys could actually play together in my headcanon mock draft. That's how it goes. I'm playing armchair GM here a little bit. But Havelid is a super skilled offensive defenseman that I think he could pair really well with, a guy like who you have going, Vladimir Grudinin, or who I have going, Leon Bichelle. And Arizona really needs help everywhere, so I think it's kind of easy to justify any position at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many picks. They can take
Mm-hmm.
a whole ton of players. They can we don't have a goalie yet, or I don't have a goalie at all. They could throw a goalie in there for fun. Like, they have so much flexibility in their picks that they can do so many different things. 37 New Jersey for you.
I have them selecting Hunter Height, another center out of the OHL. I've had the opportunity to watch him live, and the motor on him is insane. You don't really get to see it when you're, watching video, but, a being in the stands, watching him like away from the puck when the camera's not on him. You just see the intensity that he plays at. It's great. And he just needs to figure out his pacing a little bit more, maybe pair with a little bit more skilled line mates to like bounce off of him. I feel like we haven't seen everything from him yet. So like I definitely see maybe a third line center, but for a team like New Jersey, I like their top two centers already, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, but they've both kind of struggled with injuries or having time away. And Hunter Height's a guy that I think, he has that drive and intensity. He could probably slide up into a second line center, maybe even a first, just briefly if those guys are out. I think he could really, play any kind of position and cover for them if need be. So I like him for New Jersey.
Yeah, that's a good pick for New Jersey. I like that. I have them taking a defenseman here. And again, I can't move my card. Okay, there we go.
I did have them selecting a defenseman in the first round, so I tried to, balance with a forward, and you had them taking a forward, so you have a D here. Makes sense.
Yep, I got Lane Hudson here. I'm not a huge fan of this guy, but he seems to be, the consensus is that he's going to be borderline a first round pick into the second round. He's 5'8". He's a defenseman. He's 5'8", 159 pounds, 60 games played, 63 points in the U.S. program this year. He's fun to watch. He really is. But if you aren't an amazing skater, especially as a defenseman and 5'8", you're not going to last in the NHL. So no matter how good in the offensive zone or along the blue line you are. So he needs to improve his skating in order to break into the NHL. So I have him a little lower in my rankings personally. I hate to be the, he's small so he's not going to play guy, but defensemen specifically are tricky. If he was a forward, I think he could kind of, adapt his game to, able to be a smaller guy and skilled. But because he's a defenseman, I get, Victor Mete vibes in my head all the time whenever I see that. All the skill in the world, but just can't put it together because he's not an amazing skater. So, interesting to see what he does in the next couple years, if he puts on some size or if he improves that skating stride. But otherwise, could be a guy that slips.
And I like, making a comparison of another small defenseman. We've both drafted him now, Vladimir Grudinin. I feel like he's a guy who is a smaller D who does know how to use, despite being smaller, knows how to use his physicality and his skating, get the inside edge on people, use, being smaller to an advantage where Lane Hudson doesn't. And that is just a huge thing he has to overcome. It's much harder for smaller players than bigger players to overcome physical limitations like this.
Yeah, but for now, I'll keep him here because I believe in him. My 38th pick, and I have finally here for Alex, Danny Zilkin. Like you said, we saw him a bunch. 6'2" center from Guelph. 68 games played there, 55 points, 23 goals. I'm probably the biggest advocate for Danny Zilkin. I liked his potential a few years ago, even when he was 15, 16 years old and drafted in the OHL. He's dropped out of my first round, but just barely. Like you said, I see a very solid two-way centerman, able to create separation, too, off the rush. We've noted that a couple times when we're playing. He just has that ability that not a lot of centers do, to create a little separation when he's working in the zone, and he'll learn a lot from Taves in Chicago, hopefully.
And for Chicago, I have them selecting, you have them already, Ryan Chesley, the right shot D. Now, Chicago's going through a bit of a rebuild. Chesley's a solid shutdown D, and as Chicago kind of gets their window of opportunity to become competitive again, they'll need a solid back end. And I kind of feel like he's just Chicago's style of defenseman. I don't know, they've had some pretty good defensemen over the years, and I feel like he's kind of similar to them.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
Ottawa, second pick in the draft.
Second, no. And I have, maybe I'm crazy, but I have them selecting my favorite Russian in the draft this year, Alexander Perevalov. There's not too much I can say about him because I've already made a full scouting report, video and all, strengths, weaknesses, how he plays, everything like that. So go check it out in the description. Got suggested videos or something or on the channel. Please go check that one out. an incredible skater who plays a really quick rush game that I think is going to fit perfectly in Ottawa, as well as a killer goal scoring instinct, which Ottawa also really needs. He doesn't have the most incredible puck skills, but he skates hard to be in the right position. He's always given a consistent effort. He never really slumped. I think scouts are low on him because he didn't continue his crazy hot streak, but he never went on a cold streak. And I think scouts are a little bit too hard on him for that. I'd love to see him in Ottawa. They need more hard-working guys that can score.
Yeah, this great pick. I have him going to Edmonton, so we both have him going to a Canadian team. So that's really fun. My Ottawa pick is a guy I know you liked earlier in the year. I have Jack Hughes. No, not that Jack Hughes, another Jack Hughes. Plays for Northeastern University in the NCAA, which I think was a little bit troublesome for him, detrimental in his 17-18 year. 39 games played there, 7 goals for 9 assists for 16 points. If he had played in the USHL or the US Development Program before going to university, like a lot of players are this year, he would be much higher on people's lists, I think. He'll have his breakout year next year. In his second year, I guess, at Northeastern University, solid two-way center with decent playmaking ability, skates really well. I think he'll be a steal here in Ottawa.
And he really shined at the NHL Draft Combine.
Mm-hmm.
He in all the strength categories, he blew out of the water, like script test and stuff like that. So there's something like a hidden potential that I've always really liked in him. And yeah, I agree. He is one of the older skaters in this draft, but he's one of the youngest skaters in the NCAA.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, there's that. It'll be a struggle for him, but I think that overcoming those will make him that much more of a better player. I had him ranked, I think it was 16th to start the season.
Yep.
And I didn't want to have him out of my first round, but for mock drafts, I do have him a lot later.
Yeah. For 40 for me, and I think we both have the same pick here in the second round of all things, Elias Salomonsson. Wow, I'm really struggling with this card. Okay. Have to look at that. Right-hand shot, SHL defenseman, 6 foot, 172 pounds, played majority of his time in the J20 league, had 22 points in 35 games over there. Has all the tools, but I question whether the effort is there. Every time I watch him play, he seems to take a lot of plays off. He has like a non-existent motor. He talked about a guy like Hunter Height where it doesn't turn off. I think he stole it from Salomonsson. His give a shit level needs to rise pretty dramatically, but he's got all the tools. And I think in a system like Detroit's, very good prospect development system there. And I think they'll get that into him.
Yeah, I feel like Yzerman of all GMs is going to have, they have such a high expectation for their young prospects that it's going to be like a make or break scenario. And, they'll get the best out of him or they won't. And, if he's going to reach that level, he will under Detroit. They'll light a fire under his ass. And I think it'll be a really good thing for him to get drafted by Detroit. And as well, a Swede going to Detroit, could have seen that one coming.
Yeah, that's happened a few times, so we'll hope that they continue to develop them. Oh, number 41 here. Buffalo Sabres, Alex.
I'll take that one. I have them selecting the left shot defenseman, Lane Hutson. I think I completely agree with everything that you said. He is a smaller guy that hasn't been able to overcome his size. I hate, picking on smaller guys, but there are also bigger players that have trouble, developing that physicality. So, it's something that is across the board and smaller players can do it. It's harder for them, but if he does, if he really, if he comes into a growth spurt, gains 2 inches, 25, 30 pounds, and all of a sudden he's a strong skater, strong physically, he might be one of the better D in the draft. He's so smart. He's got a lot of tools, I think, but other than that, yeah, I can't have him in the first round if that small and have such like a blaring potential high risk, a flaw in their game.
Yeah, actually, I didn't mention this. He's actually a very good like small area skater, but he's not a very good straightaway guy or in transition on defending the rush. But he can make that kind of Cale Makar-esque quick turn in and around the blue line because of his size. And if he can, develop his skating a little bit more, he could be a really good defenseman because he's able to create so much in the offensive zone. 41 for me, I have Matthias Havlid. You have him picked already. 5'10", 177 pounds, split a lot of his time between SHL and Linkoping and J20. 10 goals, 19 points in 29 games in J20. Didn't have a point in 23 games in the SHL, but that's a men's league, so it's a little bit harder for younger kids to be good scorers up there. There's some defensive and skating concerns that pushed him into the second round for me, but he's got great offensive tools and he needs to continue to improve. But I think Buffalo has enough picks here to maybe strike gold here with Matthias Havlid. 42, I have another defenseman. Funny enough, I have Tristan Luneau. You have Tristan Luneau going in your first round. He had 43 points.
I do, at 21 to Pittsburgh. A little bit of a reach.
Yeah, a little bit, and there's a huge separation between my pick and your pick for this guy. So that's kind of shows you how people are a little bit divided on him. 6'2", 174 pounds, 43 points in 63 games. Is a right shot. Honestly, I expected more from Luneau this year. He was a very lukewarm performance this season for Gatineau and the Q. But I think he's a safe pick here for Anaheim and may end up sneaking into a bottom three kind of a role in the NHL in the future. But I think at 42, I think it's time for him to be off the board.
And that goes to me for Anaheim, where I have them selecting the Finnish center, Alex Santeri Kaskamaki. It might be a little bit of a reach for me. I'm sure that there's going to be somebody in the comments that says, oh, there are better Finnish players out there, but I have a really weird feeling about this pick. Kaskamaki is an elite scorer, and I think that he could really find his way into Anaheim's top six one day just from scoring alone. They're a team that struggled to find goal scoring, and there aren't many goal scorers like him at this point in the draft or left at all. They're all in the first round. So I feel like, there's something, a little bit of a hidden gem here for scoring that Anaheim could take. And also there's just something about scoring Finnish forwards in Anaheim that I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to take, a kind of chance on that.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, absolutely. 43 sends me Arizona again.
I have them selecting Mats Lindgren, the left shot D in the WHL, and this is the third defenseman now that I have Arizona picking, but Lindgren is kind of a different one. He's a smart player, but I don't think he has all the tools to keep up with the pace of the game. Being a younger player, I think he's mid-July or something. I was hoping to see him towards the end of the season kind of develop a little bit more, maybe get into that first round, but throughout the season I just didn't see it. But for Arizona, they have so many picks, especially, just here in the first two rounds, that I think that they could kind of take a little bit of a risk on him because I think the upside as a second pairing D is absolutely there if he can, kind of get the tools to match the pacing. I think he's really smart, but just a little bit too much flaws in him that I think it'll be Arizona that takes the chance.
Yeah, and they have a lot of players they could take a chance on. One of them is a guy that I'm not as high on as you are, but Luca Delbel-Beluz. Mississauga Steelheads centerman, 6'1", 179 pounds, had 30 goals in 68 games, 76 points. A player has a lot of skill and a lot of goal scoring ability, but is just way too light on his feet for me. He scored just 2 goals in his last 25 games of the year, including the playoffs, which just reaffirmed to me that when the game got tighter and when he got more competitive and harder checked, Delbel-Beluz was just completely outclassed, is non-existent on the ice. Arizona, like we said, can afford to take a risk on a guy who, some guys, just not strong enough yet. They're 17, 18-year-old kids, so he could absolutely gain a little bit of strength and, stronger on his feet and end up being a really good centerman. So Arizona takes it. Delbel-Beluz for me here. Another pick for Columbus at 44, I have them taking Philip Bystedt. Center, 6'4", he's big. J20 this year, he had 49 points in 40 games, 16 goals. Has all the tools and the size to be a potential power forward, but isn't quite there yet. He's definitely a a guy you're drafting for potential and not necessarily for what he is right now. He is very much a work in progress, but I think Columbus has a good chance to make him that.
And I'm going to talk about him later, but he started off the season as like people thought maybe, 10 to 15 overall just because of his size. The
Mhm.
potential is there. So, he's dropped because he hasn't met that expectation, but it's still always there for him. So, he's definitely a guy I think that can kind of maybe go anywhere in the draft. He might be a late first, might be a third round pick, who knows?
Yeah, depends on how NHL teams
Mhm.
see his potential.
Yeah. And for Columbus, I have them selecting Christian Kyrou, a guy that I've seen both fall and rise on people's rankings a lot. He's probably one of the best offensive defensemen in this draft, and among that, probably the best like pure goal scorer among defensemen. But his defensive game is just downright bad. It's,
Mhm.
not his style of play. He's not like he's playing too risky. He just, makes a lot of mistakes, leads to turnovers in the D zone, and it can be really hard to overlook that if you're drafting in the first round. He has the skills of some of the top end offensive D, but the rest of it just kind of isn't there for me. But in the second round, it's a no-brainer for the amount of skill he does have, especially for a team like Columbus that I think can instill a much more disciplined defensive game. And if he gets that, then he'll just be an unstoppable force.
Yeah, and for anyone wondering, he is actually the younger brother of Blues forward Jordan Kyrou.
Mhm.
So he's got a little bit of hockey lineage here that he's following in.
And at 45, I have Rieger Lorenz. This is a guy that I've been excited about all season. I've kind of just had him ranked at exactly here the entire time, and he's stuck there for me. For me, I think he's one of the best power forwards in the draft. He'll steal the puck in all three zones, and when he has it, he's unstoppable. I wouldn't be shocked if a team did draft him a little bit higher because I think that some teams may overlook the AJHL, the junior A in Canada that he played in. Because, I haven't seen too many scouts put him higher or lower, but the way he's performed, I think he deserves to be in the first round. Absolutely. It's just something about, drafting in the AJHL. I feel like he's going to fall, but I really like Rieger Lawrence. And for Arizona, I think that have them we have them both taking Cooley third overall, and Rieger Lawrence could maybe be a second line center before behind him. I really like that. So
Yeah, that's a great pick as well. My last pick here for Arizona, ending off their draft, is Ty Nelson. Ty Nelson, for me, similar player to Lane Hudson earlier in the draft. You can be small or you can be a bad skater, but you can't be both. North Bay Battalion. He's listed as 5'10", but I swear he's smaller than that. He's like I think he must be 5'8", 5'9". 196 pounds also seems a little heavy. I don't know where EP got this information from, but just looking at him, I don't know, man. He looks more like 5'8", 150 than 5'10", 190. Anyway, struggles in his own zone, decision making questionable at times, borderline first round pick. But he's got good mobility and he's a power play quarterback, but he needs to work on his skating, his straight line defensive skating, and yeah, I don't know what his size actually is. It can't be 5'10", and if it
yeah,
is, he
though
needs
I
to play bigger.
right, and I think that screams to maybe those are his actual measurements, and it just screams like how poorly he is able to play to that
Yeah,
size, and how
maybe
much how that could be a detriment later.
I haven't looked really deeply into his skating stride. Maybe he's like really bent over or something skating, like his stride
Mhm.
is all messed up. But I don't know. He's a little bit questionable for me, so I have him here 45 to Arizona. 46, Washington, Simon Forsmark. Simon Forsmark, lefty, 6'2", 194 pounds, 27 points in 25 games, primarily, or sorry, not primarily, but in the J20 league, and at 41 games played in the SHL this year. 3 assists. Not bad for a kid. Two-way defenseman, good size, 6'2". Played a lot at the pro level. Didn't look too bad. I'll be excited to see what he does with a year older next year in the SHL.
And that goes to me for Washington.
Mhm.
I have them selecting a guy I'm higher on than you, but have somehow drafted lower,
Yeah.
Luca Del Belbaluz. He's another player that I've had the opportunity to see live, and I think he's one of the best pure playmakers in the draft. Everything else, very just plain and average. He's kind of big, but hasn't filled into his size, and that translates, I think, to just mediocre skating. He's not like a
Mhm.
physical presence on the ice, and he's not a super high energy guy either. But when the puck does land on his stick in the offensive zone, well, he makes magic happen. And not only is his passing precise, but the decision making is good. He's not just like throwing the puck, into the slot. He finds space, down deep and really, makes tight passes and he's looking for them. It's not just like whip him out and hope for the best. You know, with all the rest of his game being so meh, I have him, just like you do, mid second round. But for Washington, I like him. I think that maybe, pure playmaking, it kind of reminds me of Hendrix Lapierre and why that Washington picked him, have a playmaker who can just pass the puck to Ovechkin. You don't need to be incredible all the time. Maybe you just need to pass to the greatest goal scorer of the generation right now. And I think getting Luca Del Belbaluz into the league, playing with Ovechkin a little bit, maybe just on the power play, could be really beneficial
Yeah.
to like getting him to a higher level.
Yeah. And the reason why I have him picked higher is because I think the consensus is higher. I have him ranked lower
Mhm.
personally, but this is a mock draft, so I have him picked a little bit higher.
And that goes to me for Minnesota, where I finally have the man, the myth, the Gleb.
The Gleb.
Gleb Traikusov, the winger out of Russia. He's another forward that I have made a scouting report on, so go check it out. It's on the channel. It's in the description below. It's probably in the suggested videos on the side or something like that. For Minnesota, they need more scoring than just Kirill Kaprizov, and Gleb has a lot of flaws in his game, mostly attributed to decision making, but that's really just the mental side holding him back. He has the offensive skills to complement the top six forward group, and he could have been a first round pick. He was able to make his game work at a higher level, but he wasn't able to compete against men. He just his flaws really, really put him back. I feel like he has to have one more great season before I'm super high on him, but I do like him. I think all the skills there. But 47th overall, I think he's going to drop. I know scouts have, some have him fourth in their rankings, some have him ninth, top 10, but I don't see it. I've been scouted Russia all year. I've been watching him. I have the video on him. He's good, but be a little real on him. So
Yep. It's funny we both have him going to Minnesota, so we do see the fit there. I have him in the first round, one pick apart or one round apart on Minnesota, so that's
mhm.
at least we both see the need there on Mini. Mini for me, as a guy that you've picked a few picks ago, Mats Lindgren. Mats Lindgren is actually the son of Mats Lindgren. If anyone remembers him, he played 387 games, split between Edmonton, New York, and Vancouver. In the early 2000s, had 128 points. He was drafted 15th overall in 1993 by the Winnipeg Jets. So he's comes from some hockey lineage here. Mats Jr., however, has I think like you said, a little limited. His skating is a little bit of an issue. To try to get in the NHL, but with some improvements, he could be a decent, solid, puck moving, bottom pairing type of guy. I don't expect him to be offensive juggernaut or a defensive juggernaut, just a solid defenseman, I think, possibly.
Mhm.
Moving on here, pick 48, Vegas Golden Knights. Is this the first pick?
It is their first. Yep.
For the Golden
They
Knights,
got one
it is.
pick.
Yeah, one pick, number 48. I have them here selecting Julian Lutz. 6'2", 190 pounds. Got hurt at the start of the year. Only played 14 games in DAL for Munchen. 1 goal, 2 assists. Vegas is in a position to, draft for high potential because they're in win now mode. He's a good playmaker, great skating, no issues with the physical game at all. In my opinion, this guy's an NHL player. It's just whether you want to take the risk on a guy who's been hurt and maybe his development is behind a year. But
Mhm.
I think is a solid second round pick.
Yeah, he on most scouts was around 31, 32, 33, just right at that fringe first round. And then I think after the Holinka Gretzky Cup, he got injured. And yes, he didn't start the season until February or March or something when he came back. But, for a guy that missed most of the season, he looked pretty good. Didn't, like miss too many beats coming in. He was able to use his size. And I think that's impressive. And I think at having coming back from injury definitely raised his draft stock because it was just falling and falling as he got, due to injury. And that brings me to Vegas at 48 taking Fraser Minton. And I spelled it wrong. I did Fraster.
Fraster Minton.
Fraster Minton. Apologies, it's Fraser. Fraser Minton. He's a winger, and I have a really weird feeling about this pick. Fraser Minton is a big, strong guy that was projected to be more of a late round tough guy with just a little bit of upside. But in the second half of the season and into the playoffs, he absolutely blew up. He'll beat you physically, but he doesn't just rely on that physicality to score. He has all the skills as well. I like his game. And for Vegas, I feel like he'll bring the kind of grit that they lost, by losing Ryan Reeves, but also bringing more skill than Ryan Reeves ever had. That era of the big, slow forwards is being replaced by like the big and fast and skilled. And I think Fraser Minton's like that. And he's just very exciting to watch, throwing hits, being physical. And in Vegas, he's going to be a fan favorite, I feel like. He'll just, he's out there hitting. The crowd's going to be livid. Home crowd, I think they're going to love him. So this is like a Vegas pick for me, even if I think maybe Fraser Minton could probably fall a little bit in the draft.
I like that pick. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's a super fun pick for a Vegas
Yeah.
team that doesn't have a lot of picks.
Yeah, they only have one, and I think that Fraser Minton's like a very safe pick in a way. Julian Lutz, I think, is another very, very safe pick because you're going to get like this NHL level talent. It's just where are they going to end up? And yeah, Minton's a big guy. So at 49, I have Seattle taking the right shot D, Sam Rinzel. He spent the most of the season in the Minnesota State High School Hockey League before going over to the USHL, where I think he transitioned his offensive game really well to the faster pace. When we talk about especially defensemen transitioning from high school to the USHL, I remember last year Scott Morrow. I didn't like his transition to the higher league, but I think Sam Rinzel, definitely was able to show his type of game. The defensive side, basically virtually non-existent. Even at the high school level, his defense was kind of suspect, but he is 6'4", and he knows how to use his size. He's got a really unique play, really unique style of play, and I think he does have some side, especially if he can figure out that defensive game. And just as we both have Seattle taking a D with their fourth overall pick, and maybe Rinzel could be like a second pair behind either Juracek or Nemec, however that ends up.
Yeah, he's definitely a little bit of a high risk, high reward kind of player for me. His numbers are insane at the Minnesota high school level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a solid pick. Again, a team that has a few picks and can afford to waste one if necessary. 49 for me. I have a guy that slipped in my mock draft, I think, pretty considerably to yours. I have David Goyette finally being picked here at 49. And he had 33 goals in 66 games for the Sudbury Wolves in the OHL and 73 points. He had an amazing second half of the season. He had 29 goals in his last 41 games. I think there are some issues with his decision making and has so-so skating. He's an okay skater. I think he's going to be more of a winger personally. I don't think he'll be able to drive the play as a center quite like he does in the OHL at higher levels. But he has the potential to be a decent forward one day. I think he's definitely a guy I think I would shift to the wing. Number 50, Dallas. You had him going to Arizona. I have him going to Dallas. We have Rieger Lawrence. Rieger Lawrence, AJHL guy. He's the AJHL guy in this draft. Like you said, 6'2", 194 pounds, had 38 goals, 47 assists for 85 points in this 60-game AJHL season. He was a top producer in that league. I think he plays for the Okotoks Oilers, so it's the biggest team in the AJHL by size, by money, by organization. This team could be is a could be a really good, successful WHL team, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
So they were, I think, had the top 6 scorers, and he was 5. But he was on a line not with the other guy. He was kind of driving his offense by himself. Yeah. He wasn't being used with anyone else. He's committed to the University of Denver, so that'll be really interesting to see him in the NCAA level. And yeah, people underestimate players coming out of the AJ and BCHL. They shouldn't. He's a guy with better physical attributes than skating or shooting necessarily. If he can figure out one of those, he might be a really good secondary piece. And when I say a really good secondary piece on an NHL team's bottom 6, like he might be one of those really good, not high offense guys necessarily in a top 6 or a superstar, but a really good, maybe I'll say middle 6 winger or center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like him too. He definitely does lead his own line in offense. He does play center, and I know his line mate that he does play with is another draft eligible Bowden Singleton. Probably not going to get drafted this year, I don't think, but it just goes to show that, you know, Singleton wouldn't have even been on anybody's draft rankings if not for Lauren's absolutely elevating the play of the guys around him. I think he's able to do a lot by himself, and yeah, he'll be a very sturdy middle 6 center. And at 50, I have Dallas selecting Paul Ludwinski. That's another center out of the OHL, and Ludwinski is an absolute rocket. His speed and puck skills give him just an incredible north-south game. And while I think that's definitely enough to crack a bottom 6, checking kind of defensive role in the NHL, it's basically the limit on his skills right now. I don't think he has that kind of offensive edge and is, just kind of average. There's definitely some like raw plain potential there, just pure skating. There's so much you can work with. And I think that Dallas is a team that can develop a guy like a middle 6, bottom 6 forward and get the absolute best out of him.
This
draft. 15 left.
15. That's you for 51?
Me for 51. I have the LA Kings selecting Nicholas Moldenhauer. He's a center, sometimes plays wing for the Chicago Steel in the USHL. And that's a team that pumps out prospects like no other team in the USHL. And Moldenhauer, I think, is the highest scoring at the top scoring among the first-year draft eligibles in the USHL. He got better as the season progressed, and I think that he might even have a chance to get drafted a little bit higher. But I also think he's just an LA pick. I see him probably maybe just ending up on the wing, playing with somebody like Quinton Byfield. But I like him. I think there's some upside there that scouts might not see, but I think a team could take a chance on him. And I like him for LA. I think it's just an LA pick.
Yeah. That's honestly, at this point, we're just kind of going on vibes. We're not.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what 51 at that point in the draft? So many different things could happen. For me at 51, I have one of your Russians. I have Artyom Duda. Defenseman, left shot, 6'1", 181 pounds. 52 games played in the MHL this year, 41 points, 14 goals. That's pretty good in the MHL.
It was a top scoring D among first-year draft eligibles in Russia.
Yeah, good skating two-way guy with a little scoring touch. Like I said, at 14 goals. But yeah, what do you think? You don't have a video on this guy yet, do you?
No. He is one of the ones that I plan on making if I, skip a few and go ahead, because I do like Artyom Duda. Like you said, he's a two-way guy. I feel like his defensive side goes a little bit, understated. He's better defensively than he leads on. But that scoring touch, he has a cannon of a shot. He is going to score on the power play in the NHL. That's just it. It's going to happen. He's a power play, quarterbacking kind of guy. There's a little bit of, I'd like to see him carry the puck more. Sometimes he's kind of like a one-touch pass kind of thing, and I'd love to see him skate with the puck. But you know what? What he can bring offensively is just so crazy and probably the best out of Russia as far as offensive D that, it's hard not to select him even the second, third round.
52 for me for Detroit, and you can see his name sticking out of the end because he is the longest name in the friggin' draft. I have Bryce McConnell Barker. We couldn't get him in. Couldn't fit him into the graphic. He is 6'1", 185 pounds. Plays for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds in the OHL. Had 23 goals and 26 assists for 49 points this year. He's he's good speed, good shot as like a shoot first center. He's got good size. I wanted to see a lot more from him this year. I saw at the start of the year he was in my initial, I think he was an honorable mention in my first top 16.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he had a lot more to give as a really good option up the middle for the draft. I don't know that anymore. The OHL was tough for me to grade this year because in the back of my mind, I always had none of these guys really played last year because of they missed the whole season. Like even Shane Wright was slow out of the gate. So I'll give him a little bit of a pass. I like his tools, and I think Detroit has another good centerman here that they can build up and hopefully get into their system.
Yeah, I follow a lot of, OHL regional scouts. They were way higher on him, possibly in the first round, but he fell for me too. I had him about here, I think at the mid 40s or something, but now I have him ranked closer to 80, 90. I think he's more of a bottom six kind of guy. I just, like you said, I haven't seen him take that next step. And yeah, he's got a lot there, but if there's no progression and he's not getting better the way you want, then, the projection on him just gets lower and lower. And for Detroit, I have them selecting Simon Forsmark, a guy that you have 45, mid 40s or something.
Yeah, I have Forsmark 46 to Washington.
46 to Washington. I have Detroit selecting another Swedish D in the second round. I don't know why. I'm just feeling it. I think Forsmark, he is a little bit of a slower skater, but I think under Yzerman, he could really pick up the pace a little bit. Being slow is death in the NHL, but I think that the expectations for younger players in Detroit right now is so high. They're going to light a fire under his ass and, be a really good motivator. And really the rest of Forsmark's game does look really good. He's got NHL projectable everything except for maybe skating and pacing. So being able to grow, maybe it's a physical thing. These kids are young. There's still, a step physically that many of them are going to take, and that could lead to skating. I think that if he kind of figures everything out, he could be a solid top 4 option, maybe even pair with Moritz Seider one day.
That'd be really cool.
And that brings me to Anaheim at 53, where I have them selecting Jordan Gustafsson, a winger out of the WHL. As much as we talk about Anaheim really needing scoring, I think that Gustafsson brings a sort of different, more dependable style of game. He's got hard work every shift to make up for what he kind of lacks skill, but I also think he's just going to be a really good complementary piece for Anaheim to give them some character away from just the offensive side of the game. When you talk about Anaheim, you think Trevor Zegras, the Michigan goal, but there's more to a team's identity than that, and I feel like Jordan Gustafsson could bring some to Anaheim.
Yeah, good pick. Good pick there. Speaking of offense for Anaheim, I have them selecting Christian Kyrou. I did it. Christian Kyrou, the younger brother of Blues forward Jordan Kyrou. They wish they could take Jordan Kyrou. 5'10", right-hand shot defenseman, had 60 points, 18 goals as a defenseman in Erie Otters in the OHL in 68 games. Like you said, or you picked him a little earlier. All offense, no defense. He played on a really bad Erie Otters team. Not really bad, but subpar Erie Otters team. And so why not take a pick on him here? He's got the high offensive skills. He puts up points. Maybe he could learn from a guy like Kevin Shattenkirk in Anaheim, who had a similar start to his career, I think, where he was very high prolific offense, didn't know how to play defense until his 30s. Maybe he can learn from a guy like that and figure out a defensive game.
I really like that comparison or to Shattenkirk there.
That's me for 54 for Boston. This guy just feels like a Bruin. Vincenz Rohrer. I don't know why. Don't ask me to explain it. 5'11", 168 pounds. He had 48 points, 25 of them goals in 64 games. He's a physical forward with flashes of offense in his game. He's only 5'11", but he doesn't play like it. I had to double check that. He plays like he's a lot bigger, a lot heavier than 168 pounds. because of that, I think he fits the Boston mold pretty well.
I don't have Vincent Rohrer in my second round, but I also absolutely love him. I'd probably personally rank him somewhere in the late second here.
Yep.
We got to watch him play at the World Juniors for Austria. I know, we could probably go find the recap for that Canada versus Austria game, and I have the video on Vincent Rohrer in a, what was it, 12-1 or 12-2 loss against Canada. Vincent Rohrer still looked good.
Yeah.
He was able to compete and show his skills and make stuff happen offensively against Canada's top D. And, it was really impressive. I think he stood out. And he's on an Ottawa 67 team that I don't think they're great. He was basically like their first line right winger. Yeah, they're good, but I think they could have had a lot more. And if they did, maybe he could have done more. I have a bunch of OHL talent at this, in the second round here. So he kind of just slipped under the rest of them for me, but I love this pick. I love Vincent Rohrer. That leads to my pick for Boston. I have them selecting out of the QMJHL, the right shot D, Noah Warren. And I think he has the potential to be one of the better shutdown D in this draft. And being one of the younger skaters and so big, I think that I noticed that the improvements towards the end of his year, I think that's a good sign. He's young, he's improving late in the season, and for Boston, they haven't hit on as many top defensemen out of the draft. They've made some poor draft choices on defensemen. I'm thinking of like skipping on Thomas Chabot for Zboril or whatever, their line mates. That was
that
2015, right? Yeah. And
3 in a row that they had. Yeah.
Right. And I think that adding Warren would really check a lot of the boxes that Boston, has need right now. He's big. He's got a shutdown D. He's got some high potential. I think there's some serious upside there if they develop him right. And they themselves have done a good job, I think, at when they do get the right D, getting the best out of them. A guy like Charlie McAvoy, even Dougie Hamilton, that they drafted him. Of course, both a little bit higher, but I think that they could probably get the best out of Warren again, and they need a guy like him.
Yeah, very good pick. That's all-time L on the draft there in 2015. You mentioned, yeah. Cool. 55 for Winnipeg.
That brings me to Winnipeg selecting Jack Hughes. Not that one.
Mm-hmm.
This one is a center out of the NCAA. I've been super high on him all season. I had him at like 16 in my early season October rankings. And I think that he really shined at the draft combine, but scouts were still really low on him. I don't know why. I think it's playing in the NCAA. He is the youngest skater out there when ordinarily in his draft year, he was so used to being the oldest skater. So I don't know. But for Winnipeg, they're in need of some center depth, and I think Hughes, has the potential to fill that kind of middle six, maybe third line center kind of role, but they just need something on center going forward because I think Winnipeg's in a little bit of a spiral and has, their future's kind of looking like a rebuild or something. And I don't know, even with Mark Scheifele, there's all these questions. So who knows what their center depth is going to be at all?
Yeah, who knows what the Winnipeg Jets are going to be in a year's time. We do know that they won't have defensemen because that's something they lack aggressively, so I'm going to aggressively take defenseman for Winnipeg in this draft. I have Sam Renzel. Why is the I so big compared to the rest of the letters?
Oh, you sent me a capital I.
Whatever.
I copy-pasted, right?
6'3", 181 pounds. Like you said, he played in the high school system in Minnesota and then USHL, Chaska High High School. And he's committed to the University of Minnesota next year, so we'll be able to see him at the NCAA level, so that'd be really good. So we'll get plenty of challenge there to see what he's really made of. Like you said, he's kind of, didn't get a whole lot of time taking that step into the USHL. Saw his points go down pretty significantly, but still decent time. Yeah, well, Winnipeg has him here because they aggressively need defensemen. 56. Minnesota have selecting Adam Sikora. Adam Sikora, so another Slovakian. Another Slovakian in the top 60 of this draft. 5'11", 174 pounds. In the Pro League, Slovakia had 17 points, 10 of them goals in 46 games. It's not too bad. Puck moving defenseman. Oops. Notes are all messed up. There's a long draft. He'll contribute to the Slovakian invasion. I think he'll be an NHLer, probably a bit low, to be honest. I should have taken him higher. I think looking back on it, there's a lot of D in this draft, so he might kind of slip through because his countrymen are getting the brunt of the attention, so he might slip through, and I have him here at 56.
I'm glad that you've mentioned Sakura because I think maybe the complete opposite. I've been watching him since just before the World Juniors, and he did not at all. I had him somewhere in the 4th round to start the World Juniors, and then after that I had him even lower. I don't think he didn't really impress me. Second half of the season, I saw the improvement, but I just personally I don't see it. I definitely think though, just like we're gonna see a sort of Russia effect in the draft, that Russians might fall. I think we're about to see a Slovakia effect, where Slovakians are going to go a little bit higher than they should. It's just
Maybe.
something I'm thinking about.
Maybe.
No discredit to them as a hockey country. They're obviously they deserve the bronze. They're coming up. They're rising. But as far as draft stock, I think Sakura gets a lot more attention, positive attention, than I think he deserves. Just a little bit.
And just in case there's any confusion, he is a forward, not a defenseman.
Yeah. Yes. He's a winger, usually right wing. Which brings me to Minnesota at 56. I have them selecting out of the OHL the right shot D, Ty Nelson. You have him a little bit earlier. He's a guy that at the beginning of the season, I had him higher than you did, and now I have him lower.
Yeah.
He's definitely dropped. He was originally a 1st-round pick. There's, lots of offensive upside, but like you said earlier, the defensive game and the decision-making is just, there's a lot of questions. But Minnesota has done a really, really, really good job at taking another small defenseman kind of like that, Jared Spurgeon, and turning him into a top pairing D. Ty Nelson does have the potential, and he has the skills to kind of overcome his deficits. I think that Minnesota can maybe work with him, get the best out of him. Maybe they get another top pairing D. I don't think so, but I think Minnesota, if of any team that it could happen to, it's going to be them to get the best out of them.
Yeah, great comparison. Great comparison. I didn't think about the Minnesota effect there.
Right, and the little small D. And for Chicago, I have them selecting a guy that you had a little bit higher, Philip Bystad. It's really hard, I think, to project exactly where Bystad's going to go.
Yeah.
It's clear that he lacks the top end potential. So he just being big though with his size and mobility, there's always a chance that he gets taken way higher. A team you can't teach size.
Yeah.
So, a big guy, you can teach him how to play hockey a little bit more. The potential in his physicality is just absolute. And that he has a solid floor. He's going to be a bottom 6 minimum, with his size, with his mobility. I think he has the skills to do that. And in Chicago, they kind of have a need for a guy like that. Strong, stabilizing presence. They're gonna. I've said earlier, they have they're soon going to have this window of opportunity to become competitive, and they need guys like Philip Bystad on the roster to really, give their forward core something, so they're not just kind of empty.
I've thought of along the same lines as you. I've drafted here for mock draft, not for my ranking. I don't really like this player. I'd probably have him somewhere maybe the 90s. But I know the consensus is higher on him, so I'll have him Chicago select him here as Adam Ingram. Adam Ingram, center, big center, like you said. He's committed to the University of Minnesota St. Cloud. So we'll be able to see him in the NCAA. That'll be good to see. I think his skating ability overall leaves so much to be desired. I don't like it. The stride is a little wonky. But he's a consensus 2nd round pick, I think. And maybe slips into the 3rd. So I'll have Chicago take him here.
I think I had him at 66 or 67 in my midterm rankings,
yeah.
my top 160, right? And USHL, he was at the time, he was the top scorer. I don't think he's had as great of a second half. And I think maybe I'd agree with you probably having him in the 80s, 90s in my personal rankings.
Yeah. Seattle. Again, another pick here for Seattle. I have them taking Michael Lastarza. Starza is a winger. Played for 2 teams in the USHL, Waterloo and Sioux Falls. He had 22 points and 8 goals for both teams. Committed to the Boston University next year, so another guy going to the NCAA. Didn't play on despite playing on 2 USHL teams, neither of them were good. So kind of underwhelming numbers, I think, more because of the teams he was playing on rather than him. Great offensive abilities. He lacks a really good shot. He's great at developing plays in the offensive zone, but does not have much of a shot. Physical, but questionable in his defensive zone. He's a work in progress. He really is, but he has a lot of really good building blocks to work off of, and it'd be really fun to watch him in the NCAA. I think he'll fit in really nicely there.
And is he the last selection out of the second round here that you have coming out of the USHL, or do you have another one?
It's a great question. I have a high school prep player. Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I'm admittedly completely I have a really hard time with draft projections regarding the USHL. I don't know why. There's something, I don't know if it's because I haven't watched the league enough, maybe the American style of game, but there's something about the USHL that, as far as a scout, I've just had a hard time determining things, without getting really, really, really deep into the video. There's just something about the league, I don't know. Maybe I have guys a little bit low ranked because of that, but I just want to mention that because that's the last USHL player.
I think so.
For Seattle, I have them selecting another center out of the OHL, Owen Beck.
There he is.
And there he is, right? I don't project Owen Beck to have any real top 6 potential. I don't have him in my first round. And as far as draft rankings, I'd probably put him just a little bit lower. But I do enjoy his hard-working checking role kind of style of play. Goes really hard into the boards. He's got, really hard effort every shift. He just kind of lacks the offensive elite finishing tools. So for Seattle, I think that if he slid into a third pair, according to my mock draft, last year they selected Matty Beniers, and then I have them at 35 selecting Danny Zilkin, and then here at 58 selecting Owen Beck, and that's their 1-2-3 punch for me. Beniers, Zilkin, Beck down the middle. That's a solid, center core. Yeah, I'm not super high on Beck, but as a third line center, there's you absolutely, if you've watched him play, he can play that role.
Yeah, and he's a workhorse, so you can put him on the wing too in different roles. He doesn't always have to play center. You can put him on the wing to create some energy higher in the lineup if you need him to. But yeah, that's I think a good pick here for Seattle. I had him. My last pick in the first round was Owen Beck, so we finally have you here 28 picks later or whatever it was.
And that goes to Calgary for me, where I have them selecting Thomas Hamara, the left shot D out of Finland. Calgary is hot right now, but I think that their D prospect pool is kind of starting to dry out. Hamara, I think, has some serious potential to be one of the best offensive defensemen in the draft. And, I think he has some defensive upside too, and he just kind of feels like a Calgary pick to me. I don't know if it's because I've seen guys like Giordano, Shillington, I think kind of reminds me of that style of something, and I like him as a Calgary guy.
Yeah, good pick there. I have Calgary taking a defenseman. We're going back-to-back Michaels here. Michael Starza followed up by Michael Fisher, who's a right-shot defenseman, played in the U.S. High School Prep League program last year. So we really haven't seen him against top competition yet, but he had 50 points as a defenseman, 13 of them goals in 28 games. So he had almost 2 points a game. Pardon me, I know that's in USHL prep, but he had an insane stat line. He's committed to Northeastern University next year, so we've got another guy going to the NCAA. He's a good bet here. He's a work in progress, obviously, as far as where his ceiling is. Not necessarily his skills, but just where we need to have a better evaluation of this guy. And I think Calgary is in the area to pick a guy like this at around 59. I think this will work for them. It's a good bet for now, anyway.
Mm-hmm. It was hard for me not to put Fisher in my second round. He was like one of the guys, you're picking your last few and you're trying to.
Yeah, I squeezed him into my second here.
Mhm.
Carolina. We're going to continue the defenseman train here, and I'm running out of D to pick. This is a guy that we saw a lot, and I don't think either of us liked, but the consensus is high on him. Isaiah George, out of the London Knights, the OHL. Left shot D, 6'1", 194. Plays a lot smaller than that. 67 games this year, 23.6 of them goals. Look, we saw him a bunch. I didn't like him a couple times live. Great. He was a good skater. I thought he was a good small area skater, but he had just not very good decision making. And he's just not very strong. Considering he's 6'1", he got knocked off the puck a lot. He wasn't good in transition. But I think if anyone, he has all the tools are there. I don't want to shit on him too hard. But all the tools are there for a decent, middle pairing, maybe defenseman, puck mover. And I think of all teams that could get that out of him, it's Carolina. So I think that's just a good fit as far as just organizational, the way they deal with their defensemen, the way they bring them up into the system, their coaching. Rod Brindamore is an amazing coach. Their system is great for defensemen. I'll take Isaiah George here, flyer for Carolina.
Yeah, it's his decision making in the defensive zone for me. I can watching him at the CHL Top Prospects game. He did the exact same mishandles the puck to the left of his goaltender. Big turnover. He did that twice in that game. When we first saw him play against Guelph, that's exactly what he did to give up the overtime game-winning goal to Danny Zilkin. And watching that happen, that was for us immediately. It's like, do not draft. He is just a defenseman being this poor in his own zone is so scary. And I don't know how he managed a plus 25 or plus 30 or whatever he was. It was one of the higher plus minus. I think it's just him being on a really good London Knights team. We watched fellow defenseman on his team, Jackson Edward. We liked him a little bit more, just
the games we saw.
Yeah, and I do like Isaiah George's tight area skating, but overall, I think he's not fast enough either. We saw him get outsped a couple times on the rush. There's so much here and question marks, and I don't get why. But the consensus, like you said, is high on him, and it's kind of funny. I don't like him, and you have Carolina selecting him, and Carolina selected, was it Scott Morrow last year? That I don't like either. So I think you're right now. I'm like, he convinced me.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, no, he's probably the guy that I have personally ranked lowest on my mock draft thus far. He's into the hundreds for me. So we'll see. We'll see what he turns into. Hopefully Carolina can turn him into a decent defenseman.
And Carolina, for me, I have them selecting Julian Lutz, the German left winger. He feels like a Carolina pick to me. He was injured through most of the season. We talked about him earlier. He came back and playing in the DEL. It's a pro league against men. He could have been playing in the U20 league in Germany, but playing against men, he did show that he still has his game. I think there's definitely a lot of upside. He's going to be an NHL player, and I think that Carolina's the team to get that out of him. I don't know.
There you go.
I like it. Yeah. Last 5 picks here. Ooh.
Yeah, we're coming up. We won't do a third round. We're not that crazy at this point. I know there's extra picks down here, but I think they're all just blank.
They are blank.
61 for Seattle. Another Seattle pick.
I have them selecting Tyler Brennan. First goaltender on either list here. WHL, he's probably the top goalie.
Yeah, probably.
Seattle's defense core and goaltending was exposed this year. And, I'm not going to pretend that Tyler Brennan, next year's just going to fly up and play in the NHL. But it makes you question, okay, if their goaltending isn't working, who can they dip, in their prospect pool? Who can they maybe call up? And there's nobody. Seattle does not have any goaltending prospects at all. Any top ones, maybe some fringe starter, backup type roles. But Tyler Brennan is a guy that they can have in their system and say, hey, we have a future starting goaltender that they don't have right now. They have a current starting goaltender, but they don't have a future starting goaltender. And NHL teams, you really, 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 really need to stock up on goaltenders, because all of a sudden you can be missing one and the goalie carousel doesn't happen this year, and that could be scary. So I have them selecting a goaltender, really solidifying their depth on goal, and they have so many picks. I think that they can kind of reach. There is no bona fide number one goaltender. There's no amazing goaltender. None are going to go in the first round. I'd be surprised even if he went in the second round, Tyler Brennan. I just have him projected here because Seattle has so many picks, but that's it.
No, that's a great point. I didn't think about Seattle being the team to pick a goalie. That makes complete sense to me. I like that logic a lot. For me, I have a similar thing going on with Seattle that you do. I have Hunter Height go to Seattle, and you were talking about your center depth in your own headcanon and your armchair GM, whereas Matty Beniers, you had Danny Zilkin and Owen Beck.
Yep.
Right now, I have Matty Beniers, Hunter Height, and David Goyette. So
Yeah.
I have kind of a similar thing going on where we're just kind of stockpiling good centermen. Hunter Height is an interesting player for me. Not all, and we all have to remember in mock drafts and rankings, not all kids progress at the same rate. I think Height is going to fall into a little bit slower to develop categories. 5'10", he had 22 goals and 41 points in 63 games for the Barrie Colts this year, the OHL. He just, I was waiting for him to get going at all times. He has all the tools to be a really good, maybe second-line centerman. This is a guy we're going to look back on in 5, 6, 7 years going, why didn't this guy go in the first round? Where, not to the same extent, obviously, but when Patrice Bergeron isn't in the first round, or how did that even happen? I think this is a guy that's contending for maybe that.
Yeah, I like Hunter Height. I got to see him play against for Barrie against Mississauga. A guy against both Owen Beck and Luca Del Belbaluz. And I was, I see that he definitely has a lot to work on before he becomes that kind of complete top center kind of thing at the OHL level. But I agree that we're going to look back and say, how did he get that far? And I don't think he'll even get that far. I have him at 37 overall, fringe first rounder. I would love to see him go to Seattle, though. I would love that 1-2-3 punch that you have. That's better than the way I have it. So
62, Montreal's pick. A couple good picks in this draft. I have them selecting a defenseman that I'm a little lukewarm on, but I do still like him here as a little bit of a hometown favorite. Michael Buchinger. Plays for the Guelph Storm. He's 6 feet tall. He's a left shot. He had 44 points in 63 games this year, 5 goals. He's a guy I saw a lot of live. I see the potential here. He's got, I think you can agree, he's got the skills. He's really soft on the puck.
So soft.
He's really soft on the puck, specifically in his own end behind the goal line. But all the puck skills are here. I think it was watching him. It was like, oh, you're just too young. There's a player on the Guelph Storm who's going to be drafted high next year. His name is Josh Allen. He looked older based on how he was playing than Michael Buchinger, because he was just a little stronger, a little more mobile. Buchinger, I think, will be really good in a couple years. He'll be a really good 20-year-old in the OHL, where he's putting up big points and driving play. And I think Montreal will have a little bit of a steal here in the second round. He will probably slip farther than this, most likely. Maybe into the 70s or the 80s. We'll see. But I like the skills here. I like the potential, so I'll have Montreal take him.
Yeah, I like him too. I've been extra hard on him, but because I expect a lot more, I do like him as well. He's definitely got all the skills. But at 62, I have.
Oh, by the way, I said Josh Allen. It was Cam Allen. I'm stupid.
Oh, Cam Allen. Yeah, Cam. He wasn't.
I'm stupid. Josh Allen is a quarterback.
5'11" Cam Allen, but he plays like he was 6'2". Is that what we were saying? He's a smaller guy, but plays big. And conversely, Buchinger is, he's big, but he kind of plays a little bit smaller. Not only is he just soft, but I think he just kind of stands shorter. Something about him.
Yeah.
And I have Montreal selecting a different defenseman, the right shot D out of the QMJHL, Maverick Lamoureux. He's big. He is strong. He is good at using his reach, but that's really about it. I
Mhm.
think that at this point for him, you'd be expected of him to kind of take a much bigger step in the QMJHL than he did, and he's definitely falling on a lot of draft boards. But Montreal has a lot of picks here, and I have a feeling like he is French, Maverick Lamoureux, and the French connection in Montreal and just the physicality that he brings, I think that Montreal fans are gonna love him. They're gonna be so happy. They're gonna be like, yeah, we get a tough, gritty, French Canadian guy on our team. It'll just make the organization really happy. So I have him here.
Yeah, and just the optics. That's a very French name.
Yeah, it's just optics, purely.
63, the New York Rangers, who don't hold a lot of picks.
63. No, this is, I believe, their first. And I, unfortunately, do not have a scouting report for him yet, but I have the New York Rangers selecting the left shot D out of Russia, Arseny Koromyslov. He is second on my list of Russian defenders. Solid defensive defenseman and one of the best puck handlers in the draft. Forwards and D combined. The problem is that you I'm like a defensive defenseman with puck handling skill. Like, how do you? Where's the offense? He just it's non-existent. I don't know. I'd love to see him take that puck skill in the offensive zone, but he doesn't. Really poor choices in the offensive zone, but defensively, the most responsible defenseman I've ever personally scouted with the puck. He challenges opposing forecheckers with skill. He'll use his body to create some space, make a wild behind the back spin, crazy lateral pass, and you're like, oh my god, like this guy can just move the puck so well, but the offensive side is just gone. I think he can fall a little bit more in the draft, but I personally have him going to New York. That's just the whole year I've been like, he's a New York pick. I don't know why. Maybe because the SKA 1946 St. Petersburg team that he's on is also red and blue, the jerseys, and it kind of like, oh, it looks like the New York Rangers. But I have a weird feeling that he's going to fit with them. And he really stepped up his performance in the playoffs. He went from being just kind of, having more flaws defending the rush to just being so active. And I think that being able to step up in those, big high pressure games like he did, leading his team in plus minus among defensemen, leading the whole playoffs among defensemen and plus minus, he really stepped up, and I enjoy that about him. And I think he's going to go back up people's draft boards because of just the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think he's a little underrated for what people are seeing. And, at this point, a mock draft is 63. The jerseys being the same color, it's good as reasoning as any. As good as reasoning as any that I've seen. For me, this is my selection, okay, for best name in the draft. There's a lot of good candidates. Rucker McGroarty, Luca Del Bel Blues,
Jimmy
Snuggerud. We got some candidates. Pano-Fimis. Best name of the draft. Centerman, Niagara Ice Dogs of the OHL, had 14 goals and 30 assists, 44 points, 54 games this year. A guy that was seen as a potential first-round pick at the start of the season. A lot of people had him on their first-round board. Didn't really put it together this year. But has a lot of good tools, so we'll have the Rangers take him here. I think again, we're just going on vibes now. I think this is a good pick for the Rangers, and I think still has a lot of potential. I think he's one of those guys that really didn't benefit very well losing a year of development. So I think a lot of the OHL players are behind, especially, the Shane Wrights of the world don't really miss a step, but these guys in the second, third round, they might miss a step. So we have a lot of them. There's a lot of good centermen, and I'll take Pano-Fimis here. Best name of the draft 2022.
And I remember, beginning of the year, the OHL was kind of like Shane Wright, Ty Nelson, Pano-Fimis. Pano-Fimis was like, you're the second best center in the OHL. And I think part of having taken that year off is that you get unrealistic and inaccurate expectations on some of these players. So you'll be like, oh yeah, he should be the first round pick. And it's like, okay, well, that's when he was 16. You thought that, like there's a
Yeah.
whole year and a half of development they have to go through, and it's a year and a half. Like it's a long time. So
All right.
for these next two picks, we have the metallicized because the order is not yet confirmed.
Yep. Yeah, we do have Metallica. So we do at this point in time, Colorado is up 3-1 in the series, so we're going to assume that New York will have this pick here. Are you ready, Alex, for the Ottawa Senators? Are you ready to purchase the Dmitry Bachelnikov jersey?
I am.
Hell,
I am.
yes, our boy Dmitry Bachelnikov. Smaller forward, 5'10", out of SK St. Petersburg in the NHL. This guy scored 41 goals in 56 games. He's a second-year eligible player. You had a scouting report on him last season, and the Dmitry Bachelnikov commented on that video. He found his own video and commented on it. So, friend of the channel, question mark, Dmitry Bachelnikov? Very cool. Fast-scoring winger. These kind of wingers might be a dime a dozen, but we think we have the tools that he gets it done. If you want to hear Alex's take on him last year, there's a playlist on our channel for Alex's reviews of all the Russian skaters in the Russian system last year. That's where you'll find Bachelnikov. For now, he's an Ottawa Senator, Alex. Mark my words.
I would love this. He is an above-ager. Yep. So for those of you following along, we have only had first-year draft eligibles up to this point. Ryan is just having a lot of fun. Yes. But I do like it. I don't think he'll go in the second round. I feel like he'll probably be a fourth-round pick, maybe fifth. Bachelnikov he was going to get drafted, and then he got injured in the second round of the playoffs. And the way that he twisted his leg, his speed is his biggest asset, and I think that because he hurt his leg, teams are going to be like, we'll wait another year, or maybe draft him lower. But I think if he had played out a full season, maybe a second-round pick, because he is one of the better, probably one of the best non-drafted Russians from that year.
Yeah. One of the better scorers. Fast. He's
speed.
The speed on this kid, he's pretty good. I like him. I would take a flyer on him. Maybe not at 64, like you said. I think it's just fun to have him in Ottawa. But I would consider him a little later in the draft. I wanted to get our boy Dmitry Bachelnikov his
and
time
really
in the
for
mock
me, for me it was he's a winger and he played a little bit he let his size be a disadvantage. And he still plays on the wing, but his that physical step, he has gotten a lot stronger. He plays more physical. I think he's grown past the reasons that I think he didn't get drafted last year. So I really do hope he gets drafted. But on to me, I have Ottawa selecting Devin Kaplan, the right winger, the USDP. Just feels like an Ottawa pick to me. He's big, he's physical, he's skilled, and it kind of reminds me of how Ottawa drafted Roby Järventie in 2020. He's another big, skilled guy. And then in 2021, they drafted Tyler Boucher at 10th overall. It was a yikes pick.
Yeah.
I think it should have been maybe in the second round, and then I could say, look, Järventie, Boucher, Kaplan, second round, big winger kind of guys. Boucher should have been drafted in the second round, so I want to pretend he was instead of with that 10th overall pick, but it just feels like an Ottawa pick that they're kind of looking for some big, strong, skilled wingers in the past few years, and they've done some good drafting out of the U.S. as well, so I just have a good feeling on this one.
Yeah. If you want to see Alex's soul leave his body, go find our live stream reporting from that draft that simmed to about 10th overall. You can see his live on camera. Alex's soul left his body
because I had mocked Cole Sillinger to go at 10.
Yeah.
So when it got to that point, my heart's pounding. I'm like, we're about to get Cole Sillinger. It's about to happen. This is exactly what I wanted. And
Boucher.
Boucher. And then he goes to Columbus. Yeah. And then he plays and has an amazing season. And
yeah, that's going to be a name that is going to follow you around, I think, for a little bit as a Sens fan. Cole Sillinger specifically.
That one.
Unless Boucher turns into something, in which case it'll lessen the pain a little bit. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Clearly has not played as good as Sillinger. He's still playing in the Ottawa 67s. He is actually the second line right winger behind Vinzenz Rohrer.
Oh, fun. Or
Interesting
not
little
fun
tip.
for you, but fun.
Yeah, not fun for me, but I like Vincent's roar, so
Yeah.
it's kind of bittersweet.
Maybe Ottawa will draft Roar
Yeah.
instead. Last pick of the draft here, or
Last
our
pick
mock
of the
draft.
round two. I have New York, the Islanders selecting Kasper Kulonumi. Kulonumi. I'm trying to pronounce that one right. He's a right shot D out of Finland and an incredible skater. And I like that not only is he just a good skater, but he knows how to use his speed to do a little bit of everything. I don't see, there's no top end, he's going to be a top pairing guy offensively, not going to be a top guy defensively, but he has a little bit of everything. And I see him as like the perfect bottom pair guy. Just, solid, stick him on your bottom pair. He's responsible, maybe a seventh extra D kind of thing, but he is just so complete overall that even if there's no top end potential, I want to have him in my second round.
And to close off my mock draft, I have the New York Islanders here selecting Alexander Pelevin.
Palavin.
Pelevin. Nizhny Novgorod system. MHL 5'11 defenseman, left shot, had 8 points in 29 games. Why don't you? Do you have a report on this guy? He's one of your
I
Russians, yeah?
Yeah, I actually do. He's a little bit smaller, 5'11, I believe, but he moves his legs, his feet, his footwork is incredible. He can drop to the ground and get up like a goalie, doing a butterfly or something. He kind of looks like he's making goaltender saves out there sometimes. It could be his ultimate weapon, his foot speed, but I think he relies on it too much, and that it's a good problem to have, but also when he gets to the NHL, it'll be something that he works on. But I do like Palavin. I have him closer to the 110th, 100 maybe overall. I think he's going to drop a little bit just because he doesn't score. You look at a guy like Artem Duda, 40 something points in 50 games compared to Palavin, who put up, he's in like, what was it, 8,
Yeah, 8
25 or
points.
something. It wasn't enough for the preseason expectations set out for him. So I do have him dropping a little bit, but as far as solid defenders go, he's a very, very, very safe pick anywhere in the draft.
So there you go. That is it. We have a full 2 rounds of mock draft. We did have round 1 a separate video. If you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. We'll scroll through here. A lot of good picks here. And of course, we can try to, the top 10 might be predictable, but the rest of it, once you get into the 40s, 50s, and 60s, who knows? Like some of these guys might end up not going until over 100. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I like a lot of these players. We'll
This is a mock draft. We don't have any second year draft eligibles, third year draft eligibles. But we've seen, especially into the second round, that's when they come. So it can never be that our mock draft will be perfect. Even like in a perfect world, you're gonna get guys like Brett Brochu maybe getting drafted in the second round, an above age goaltender. There's just too many things up in the air like that. I know in 2020, Columbus shocked everybody at 20th or 19th, 21st overall. Yegor Chinakhov, an above ager as well, who has done a really good job transitioning to the NHL. But, so our mock drafts in the second round aren't going to be perfectly accurate. So, like you said, some of these guys might just drop because of that to 100 because there's just, better above agers. But I think that, as you go down the list, the guys that do select those first year draft eligibles, we're going to be pretty spot on for.
Yeah, and
like I can see, like Paravolov or a guy like Bystad, like a team. Who did you have taking Bystad? I forgot now.
I have Columbus taking Bystad.
Columbus, right? Like I can see them even if there's an above
There he is.
an above ager goes, he might get drafted there anyway or something. Who knows? So
yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did make it this far, I really appreciate you leaving a like and subscribing to the channel and joining us live on draft day. We're going to be full stream of all the draft as much as we can on day 2. As much energy as we have normally. It's like an all day thing. Mm-hmm. So the draft is in Montreal this year. Going to be a party because they're they're picking first overall in Montreal, and that's super really really cool for them. I'm excited for Montreal fans. Even as a Leafs fan, I can appreciate that's really cool. So yeah, join us that day. We'll be live. Thanks so much for watching again. Appreciate all your support.
Oh yeah, but we're Dopamon, two best friends here. We talk hockey news, analysis. We got mock drafts like this. I've got a bunch of scouting reports on the channel. Go check them out. We got video. I talk about their strengths and weaknesses. We just love hockey. We love the draft. This is this is it for us. So we hope that you hit like and subscribe and stick around for more content like this, because the off season is coming up and we're getting a little bit scared. So we want to do as much hockey as possible, and we're loving it.
Sounds good.
That off-seasonal depression is
The off-seasonal depression is coming, but until maybe a few weeks in after trade free agent frenzy, then we'll get into off-season mode. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Peace.